Hey guys, how you going? This is BillyEatWorld again. Thanks for stopping by, and just remember, if you like what you see, don't forget to hit that like button. Also, feel free to take a look at some of my other videos if you like. You can find them all in playlists in the description down below. But anyway, in today's video we're going to be taking a quick look at the controversial new upgraded PS4 or PS4K that Sony is apparently working on. And I say controversial because in the last week or so, a lot of players and developers have come out criticising the idea of a new console so soon. In a nutshell though, basically the new PS4 is going to be a much more powerful system that bridges the gap between the current PS4 and the next generation. Which sounds like a great idea, right? Well, except when you realise that add-ons and upgrades to existing consoles historically just don't work. For example, when I was back in primary school in the mid-90s, before the N64 and the PS1 came along, everyone had either a Super Nintendo or a Sega Mega Drive. But by the year 2000, Sega had gone from being a giant in the gaming industry to a struggling company that would never make a console again. And this is basically due to the fact that in trying to outperform the SNES, they released a number of add-ons for the Mega Drive like the Mega CD and the 32X, which meant that by the time Sega released a new console, the Saturn, they were frantically trying to support 4 different platforms, and they let a lot of their loyal fans down. Now, with that being said, I just can't understand why Sony, a company that entered the gaming industry in the wake of Sega, would try and do the same thing, because any new console is bound to split the player base, and this would negate the PS4's biggest advantage, which is more active users. For this reason, at the moment, the PS4 is one of the best platforms for online gaming, because with a massive player base, games stay active for longer. And also, as we saw with Destiny and Battlefront, because of the larger install base, developers prioritise the PS4, which leads to more exclusives and perks for PS4 owners. Which brings me to my next point, which is that to sell any new console or add-on, there needs to be exclusive games. And with a smaller install base, the opposite of what I just said is true, because there's less incentive for developers to spend resources creating these exclusives. For example, when you take a look back at all the failed add-ons and consoles in the history of video games, you'll see that the one thing they have in common is small libraries. So basically, unless Sony can somehow make it worthwhile for devs to make exclusives for the PS4K, I just don't think there's going to be enough games to make it worthwhile. Now, another huge problem that would affect the amount of games on a new console is the problem of different specs. In other words, if the PS4K is able to perform better than the PS4, then logically games are going to have to be re-optimized to make use of their full potential. What this means is a lot more work for studios who may just decide it's not worth it and release sub-optimal games for the PS4K. And considering devs already nerf games to avoid creating a disparity between platforms, it's not hard to imagine this happening on the PS4K as well. Even bigger than the problem of quality games though is getting players to buy the console in the first place. And assuming that this console is going to be sold alongside the existing PS4, it's safe to assume that a lot of people will just opt to skip the PS4K. The reason for this is because historically, when given the option, most console players will opt for the cheaper version even if it's not as good. And considering consoles usually have to sell huge numbers to be considered a success, it's hard to see the PS4K competing with 3 other consoles. But anyway, to finish up, all in all I think you can see that although it's not impossible for a PS4K to succeed, it definitely is going to be an uphill battle. And after so much criticism from the gaming media and the community, it kind of makes you wonder whether Sony will actually end up finishing the project. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, but personally I think their time and effort would be better spent working on the next generation than improving the current one, because I think if they do actually release the PS4K, it's probably going to be up there with the Sega Saturn as one of the biggest hardware mistakes in the history of gaming. But anyway guys, that just about wraps up this quick video, so let me know what you think in the comments section below, and as always, if you like what you see, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. Also, check out the links in the description below if you want to see any more of my videos, or if you want to support my channel on Patreon. And until next time, see you later, and have a good one.